Hi, everybody. It's meteorologist Joe Chaffee. Sunday, January 27th, 2019. Just turned 60 today. And I don't know if you saw my morning live stream, but heating pad because I've got a pinched nerve in my neck or a bulging disc, or as Timothy, I actually pulled up some exercises and they actually did relieve it a little bit. Uh, Hopefully, it doesn't act up. It's pulling a bit at the moment, but hopefully, it doesn't act up on live stream. Great birthday present for me, but it was a good day nonetheless. And doing a second live stream, I did the one earlier today. I thought this would be a good opportunity to just kind of update everybody on a Sunday evening. And I got to watch Victoria, which I watch on PBS, which was really nice. So we're going to take care of things right away. All right. So very volatile week ahead. We've got a lot of stuff going on in terms of preemptive watches and warnings, and some of those are being acted upon right now. So we'll start with the extent of winter storm watches. And if you're watching across the South, this may be your opportunity. And I just want to point out two things. First off, we've got the warnings and the advisories that are up right now for much of the Midwest, the Upper Midwest, and the eastern part of the Northern Plains. That is pretty much going to happen as advertised. I think we've got blizzard warnings up for northeastern South Dakota and southeastern North Dakota and a small portion of west central Minnesota. And then we've got a larger area of winter storm warnings for a good chunk of Minnesota and northeastern Iowa, almost the whole state of Wisconsin, except the extreme north, where we've got advisories there, and advisories also on the southern flank going into Illinois. A narrow band of winter storm warnings in northernmost Illinois, warnings in much of Michigan now, except for the southern counties, which are under an advisory, and those extend into northern Indiana. I think those are going to verify fairly closely to what's forecast. Now, we've got the second area that is going to be really in play for Monday night and Tuesday and into Tuesday night. And we're seeing winter storm watches up for northeast Louisiana, much of central Mississippi with advisories in the north, winter storm watches for the northern half of Alabama, northwestern Georgia, eastern Tennessee, the western mountains of North Carolina, southwest Virginia, and southeastern Kentucky. There's also winter storm watches up for several counties in northeastern Pennsylvania, northward up the Catskills, and into northern New York. Now, I'm expecting more watches to go up on Monday in the interior areas of the Northeast as we head up into New England. And there will also be additional winter weather advisories that will come up in other surrounding areas when we get into Tuesday and this Arctic cold front begins to sweep eastward. I think with this area here, particularly in the southern part of the forecast, the watches that are up in the south and the advisories, those are going to have, first of all, the criteria for watches is a lot lower. A winter storm watch in northwest Georgia, for example, or northern Alabama is not the same as, say, a winter storm watch as you go up further to the northeast. But because the snow amounts in the south, in some areas of the south, a 1 to 3 inch snowfall is a big snowfall. It's not a big snowfall as you move your way up through the mid-Atlantic states and head on up into the Northeast. So it's kind of a relative thing here. You folks that are watching from down south all know quite well what happens when you get these lower snowfalls. They're tougher to handle because you just don't see them very often, and that's completely understandable. You can sometimes go a full winter season without seeing a flake or an ice pellet in this region, depending on what the overall pattern is. Now we already are seeing the snow that is coming down with the system that is moving into the northern plains, and the radar signature is actually pretty decent here. It's got that comma-shaped swirl to it, that look to it as it moves to the southeast. So we've got in the darker greens probably where we're seeing some heavy snow falling, as opposed to what you see in the lighter shade of green and in the blues where the snow is a bit lighter. And of course, back where we have the blizzard warnings, it's meeting criteria on all levels, really. You've got snow not necessarily heavy snow, but you've got falling snow. You also have temperatures that are down below zero, and you have wind to deal with as well, with very strong wind gusts. And to the west of there, where there is no snow falling or no blizzard warning up, you have all sorts of high wind uh, warnings and advisories that are up as well. So this is going to play according to form. We've got this Arctic air mass that's coming down, the vortex in Canada dropping down into the Great Lakes, be it polar, Siberian, or whatever it is. The bottom line is that we're going to wind up seeing some really cold, low temperatures up in the northern plains, with readings down at minus 30 or lower, and not getting much above minus 20 for daytime highs. And then we are looking at um, uh, places like Chicago that are going to see temperatures well below zero for 72 hours or longer, and we're talking double digit below zeros both a day and night. So it's a pretty formidable cold air mass that's coming down. By the time it gets to the east, it is going to be somewhat modified in nature, and still it'll be cold enough with temperatures down in the single digits and below zero in some places. I think the big cities are going to wind up staying above zero when that cold air arrives. Meanwhile, we've got a storm system off the Florida coast that's moving northeastward, and that's producing rain. The state of Florida getting a lot of rain today from south to north. It's just been an absolute washout kind of day up and down the peninsula there with this low. And we've been mentioning the fact that with these puzzle pieces in the upper air, the way it's been set up, we could have had a big storm here up the East Coast if the Atlantic were cooperating a bit in terms of the upper flow, but it's just not. In the meantime, the rain just along the immediate North Carolina coast. So this still wound up coming left of what weather models were indicating. Now, as far as snowfall is concerned, let's just roll back. This does not include snow that has already fallen. So this some places it doesn't. In some places it will be in addition to whatever's fallen during late this afternoon. But as you go further east and the snow gets to Wisconsin and eastward, these numbers obviously haven't happened yet. So these will be the total amounts. And some of these areas ahead of this bitter cold air are going to pick up as much as a foot of snow. And on the western side of Michigan, of Lake Michigan, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. The eastern shore of Lake Michigan in western Michigan. This is where we could see 1 to 2 feet of snow up and down that whole flank there. And the Weather Service, you can see plugging even some amounts up in the 20 plus inch range, but a large area there getting a foot plus. Detroit in line for 4, Chicago 5 on this. 7 to 8 inches in northeastern Illinois, where we have the winter storm warnings. Then you get to some lower amounts as you go a bit further south into central Illinois, central Indiana, maybe Indianapolis in that 1 inch zone, across Ohio, looking at 1 to 2 inches. And then we head down to the south, where we've got these winter storm watches up, and you can see what the amounts are being forecast here. Basically, 1 to 2 inches of snow. And with temperatures falling, this could also start as rain. And as the temperatures drop, you're going to have all of that icing. You got to be careful with these Arctic fronts, though, because sometimes models can overplay the snow on the north side of the front, and it winds up being less than forecast. But you combine all the factors of rain at the start that turns that turns over to snow, and temperatures that fall below freezing pretty quickly. You're going to wind up with the icing developing, particularly because salting is not exactly a high priority across the South because of the fact that you just don't see these snow events happen too often. 1 to 3 inches across much of Tennessee, with 3-inch amounts in eastern Tennessee into western North Carolina. And then as we go up further north, you're looking at some 3 and 4-inch amounts being forecast for West Virginia. Here's where in the Northeast, where it's also going to be a tough forecast. It boils down to a race. You've got cold air coming east with this Arctic boundary. There's overrunning precip on the backside. And as long as the upper air winds remain from the south, you're going to wind up with some overrunning precip on the back side. But as soon as those upper air winds start to turn to the west, you're going to dry that precip up and shut it off. So I think that puts the forecast that you see for 1 to 2 inches along the coast, or at least an inch or a coating to an inch along the immediate coast. That might put that forecast a bit at risk. Really, it depends on the timing. And if the cold air gets in a little faster, then you could wind up maybe with a little bit more. Now you go further inland. This is being that the front is oriented more north-south. The further west you go, you're going to start picking amounts up a bit. So you head toward the Jersey PA border, and you've got some 2 and even 3 inch amounts. And this could be a situation, by the way, where Washington, D.C. and Baltimore pick up 2 or maybe 3 inches, and Philadelphia maybe picks up a couple of inches. But New York City might only be on that coating to maybe an inch line, or it could very well just be on the in gear for a coating. And you go northeast of there, across Connecticut, except for the northwestern county of Litchfield, it's mostly a coating to a couple of inches there, and the same for southeastern Massachusetts. So what it really boils down to is the area that is in the snow drought is probably the area that is most at risk for seeing little or nothing. If you wind up setting everything just a little bit further west, if it winds up being a couple of degrees warmer ahead of the front on Tuesday, there's only a limited amount of time as far as the precip is concerned for it to be something problematic. Now, it might be more problematic as you go into northeastern PA and on up through upstate New York. And some of this, by the way, is lake effect. So you got those numbers kind of in the mix here. And heading on further north up into Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, you can see that the numbers are in the 6 to 12 range. So again, I would expect to see winter storm warnings getting extended here, or winter storm watches, excuse me, being put up at some point during the day Monday, because there's more time here. Here we're talking about later Tuesday, or more than likely Tuesday night, as far as the precip is concerned. So I'm just gonna bring up, because I had it up here and I accidentally cancel it, close it out. So I'm gonna reopen the surface map tonight, because it's pretty interesting with with what's going on. We've got a cold front that's approaching the East Coast. The high that is over Ohio and Indiana. The air is cold back through the Great Lakes. Much of that cold air will probably stay north and west of the immediate coast, because that's where everything is kind of setting up with regards to that transition zone. And then you have this low that is off the Florida coast, and this fetch of northeast winds still feeding in moisture, and this large area of rain that runs from the Carolinas southwestward and still over the Florida peninsula. It's been a very raw, rainy day in the state. A lot of areas right now are just in the 40s and 50s with a cold soaking rain. And meanwhile, you head up north, and there's our low dropping down out of Canada into central North Dakota. All these temperatures here, you go from teens to single digits to below zero in the area that we have the blizzard warning. You see the gradient's pretty tight here with these isobars, very, very close. And then head further north, and now you've got, of course, this bitter cold high that is coming down with some fairly wicked temperatures as that air mass eventually makes its way into the northern plains. So pretty wintry weather map that we see tonight. So I'm going to start with the last run of the GFS. The new one is just starting. So what I think we'll do is we'll look at the old GFS, then we'll switch over to the new NAB, and then we'll come back to the old GFS. One of the things that happened this afternoon, and I'm not really changing my forecast very much. I haven't changed it at all, for that matter. In fact, let me show you what I did. Bring that up. And by the way, I did put up a link on YouTube. I shared a link to my YouTube community, which is my subscribers, to all the National Weather Service forecast maps up and down the eastern seaboard. So check that notification you may have gotten. It'll give you a link, and I put them on it's on my Patreon platform, and it is open to everybody. And this is, pretty much what it looks like. And you can just kind of scroll down and take a look at all the forecast maps up and down the East Coast. I want to get my forecast map, which is on my another link. And sorry about the delay here. So we'll bring up my early call. Okay. Now this was a map that I drew up yesterday. I did not change it. I don't readily change my maps, my forecast maps on. I usually do an early call within 72 hours of an approaching event. And this is what I did yesterday. Now, I can tell you that what I may wind up having to do with regards to the final call is I might have to tilt that zero line more to the, I have it moving almost north-northeast or just east of north up into western Connecticut. I'm going to see what the model trends are. I may have to tilt that more eastward and pull that 1-inch line, perhaps through southern New York and into Connecticut and pull that eastward and maybe tilt that 2-inch line down. But I feel pretty comfortable with this. This is the forecast area that I handle, and I have this 1-inch line, Philadelphia in the 2-inch line. You can see I have New York City basically between 0 and 1 inch, and then 3 inches as you get on the Pennsylvania side. I'm not as bullish for the snow amounts as northeastern Pennsylvania as the Weather Service is. I may have to juice those up a bit. And, that 4-inch line extending southwestward into western Maryland. I've got Washington, D.C. and Baltimore kind of straddling that 2-inch line. Could be either side of that. And then you start to go west of Scranton. I've got 4 inches for State College, Altoona, 3 to 4 for Harrisburg, for Reading, 3 to 4 for Scranton, right in that zone there, and then on up to 6 inches plus as you go further to the west. So again, it's a 72-hour early call. I'm probably going to tighten the lines up a little bit, maybe shift them a little bit to the east or possibly to the west, depending on what the model trends. But I just don't like changing forecasts every 6 hours when a new model run comes out. That makes absolutely no sense. I looked at what I looked at and I made a decision, and now we'll see where it goes. All right, so the old GFS, which of course you've got this front coming through. Now we can watch the low dropping down from the northern plains into west central Iowa, then starts to turn eastward into northern Illinois. It passes very close to Chicago. So that's kind of critical for Chicago in terms of the snow amounts because of how close it's passing. There's going to be a sharp southern cutoff, and you can see that it's mostly rain once you go south of where they have that winter storm warning, winter weather advisory up. So somebody's going to have, there's going to be a bust for somebody somewhere. There always is with snow events. And the low off the southeast coast, of course, now that heads out to the northeast and is of no real consequence to any of the weather on Monday or Monday night. The high, you got a high that's building over there in southeastern Canada. It's trying to hold cold air down through New England. You see the isobars are kind of bent down, pushed down in toward New Jersey. And now you've got the low in western Michigan, and it's a not an overly intense low, but because of the strong high coming down, you have a pretty tight gradient on the west side. The bitter cold air is feeding in. Now here's where it gets tricky across the south. So you're getting some overrunning here in the south with the northeast winds and the big upper trough, the upper low, and the vortex dropping down with the southwesterly winds aloft, and you get this narrow band of snow. And in some areas, it might actually briefly snow hard for a short period of time, but I want to see it materialize. Basically, the models sometimes can do this, and then when we get close to the event, just like we have that risk of the precip shutting off here in the east, when those upper air winds start to turn westerly, the same risk is there in that southern flank. Now, Tuesday morning, there's already some snow being indicated by the GFS across Pennsylvania, and now you're getting the cold front very close to the coastline by Tuesday afternoon. But it's warm ahead of it from New York City southward, and you see that band of rain, which then goes over to snow, and you start to see the model generate all this darker blue snow. It's telling you that this is, there's some snow of intensity. So I think to put down those amounts, you got to get some intensity out of this. And if you do, you can put down a quick couple of inches because you only have about 6 hours worth of time. There's going to be a wave, and there is a wave here. It's a little hard to see because of all the colors and the way the isobars are lined up. But you've got the front running from the low that's in northeast of Lake Huron down through New York State, and then there's probably a wave that develops on that front, a weak one, but it might be enough to enhance the precip. That's why we're seeing it here. And by Tuesday night, there's a I could probably put a low right over New York City on this, and just to the north and west of that, it's turned over to snow, and then it's mostly snow through Pennsylvania. By 1 a.m., the back edge is probably further east. This is showing you how much has fallen. So by 1 a.m., you're changing it over to snow on Long Island. This is again a big question. It could shut off and not happen. I will have to address that as we get closer tomorrow night into Tuesday. If I start pulling those lines further to the east, and then out it goes up into New England, and New England, of course, does well with this. Also, look at Wednesday afternoon, right? Actually, Wednesday morning. If you look back in Western Pennsylvania, there's a front here. This is where the bitter cold air is. There's a second cold front that's coming in. So actually, this is the polar front that's running ahead. The Arctic front comes through Wednesday around midday. And I wouldn't be shocked if there's a snow shower or a snow squall with this when it goes by. And then once that goes by, that's when the temperatures really just fall off the wall for Wednesday night into Thursday night into Friday again. And as quickly, by the way, as the cold air comes in, it's going to go out. In the process of that cold air going out, you're going to have some warm advection, and there'll probably be an area of snow that will break out in the Ohio Valley on Friday. Now, whether it holds together or not is another matter. A lot of times, this stuff just likes to fall apart when it hits the mountains. There's not a whole lot of support to it. And other than that, this is going to be another instance where you're going to have all this bitter cold air. And then as we move into next weekend, you're going to see a rainstorm. I mean, look at this, where they're going to have temperatures running at 20 or more degrees below normal. I'm sorry, 20 or more degrees below zero. You're going to be warming up and raining, and maybe not even as much as a flake or an ice pellet. We just saw that happen here. Well, it's going to be happening up in the Great Lakes as this next storm comes out of the plains and cuts to the western Great Lakes. I know it's really bizarre to see that happen, but it does happen from time to time, and then that moves away to the northeast. I'm going to address the long range real quick a bit later on, but let's go to the new NAM model and see what adventure that model takes us on. So there's the NAM setup. These are the actual radar echoes. The radar for at least with what's off the southeast coast. This was supposed to be at 8 o'clock. So the northern flank is actually right off the coast. So it looks like the NAM doesn't have the best handle on this. And then you've got your low that's dropping down out of the plains, passes near Milwaukee. So it passes north of Chicago. So Chicago, you're going to get this burst of snow here during the overnight. It's going to come in probably at about 2 or 3 a.m. And then it's going to be done by about 10 or 11 a.m. as the low goes by to your north. And here comes your cold air. So, of course, that ocean low is going out. Now, you can see how the NAM starts to develop on the northern flank there, back through Tennessee and northern Mississippi and Alabama. It's a very, very narrow band of snow. It's the darker blue, so it's kind of indicating that it's a sharp but narrow band of moderate snow, and maybe even some heavy snow briefly. That moves into northern Georgia, and now you've got by 1 o'clock in the afternoon snow on the doorstep of New York City, snow in upstate New York, snow in all of PA, but it goes over to rain in New York City before it comes back as snow as the front shifts to the coast. And you can see how sharp it cuts off. This is at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, 7 o'clock, 10 o'clock. By 1 a.m., it's done. So you're going to have to put it down quick, and uh, uh, it's going to be how does the cold air get in here a bit faster while there's still precip going on? It really boils down to that. Does it snow for 2 hours? Does it snow for an hour? Or does it snow for 4 or 5 hours? Because that extra hour buys you perhaps an extra inch of snow in a situation like this. And then after that, in comes the cold air. One of the things I did notice about the NAM is that it seems to be colder on this run than in the prior runs. It's showing a little bit more of a robust area of snow, and it's starting to look more like the quote unquote, let's call it slightly more bullish GFS model run. So it seems to be trying to go in the direction of the GFS, which generated a bit more snow out of this than what the dam had been doing. And we get to the same place that the other model does. There's your Wednesday afternoon. Here's your Arctic front. So you've got this squall, this line of snow showers and maybe a heavier snow squall. And I think there's a chance that we could see that come through in much of the area from, say, eastern Pennsylvania on up into southern New England, and you could wind up with something that whitens the ground or perhaps leaves a little bit more before the real cold air comes in for Wednesday night and for Thursday. So let's see how much of the new GFS we have, and we'll switch it over. Let's fix the map up a little bit for you here. All right, we have out to 42 hours. All right, so that'll take us at least into Tuesday afternoon. Looks like the GFS is actually handling that system off the southeast coast a bit better. The low's a little bit further south than northern system. It's between Chicago, it's closer to Chicago than it is to Milwaukee. Moving across, we head into Tuesday morning. Has more in the way of snow here, at least in terms of what actually falls in northern Alabama, northern Mississippi, and even some snow down up into southeast Louisiana, believe it or not, or almost in the south, more like southwest Louisiana, but still there. Then it shifts eastward, and here we are at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. It's a fairly narrow band here. You can follow that front down from the low, running through central New York, east central PA, north and west of Washington, D.C. at this point, then just kind of snakes down western Virginia, western North Carolina into northern Georgia. Atlanta gets snow out of this, if that's correct. So we'll come back to this in a minute after some we get some new additional maps. Oh, we just got a new one, so we can take it out to 48 hours. So here it is, Tuesday evening. The precip actually bulges back a little bit on the northwest side. You've got rain at New York City, snow in northern New Jersey, snow in eastern PA down to Washington, D.C., Baltimore. It matches up. Let's match it up to the 18Z. It's close. It's not that far off. So GFS has been actually pretty consistent with this. So it lends a little bit of confidence. Let's run back one run. And let's look at how the GFS plays the snowfall totals. So there's your stripe of snow. The Weather Service, of course, it's got those bigger amounts because of lake effect. So you're seeing from being produced by the system itself, not including snows already fallen, of course, on the western side of this, but it looks like a general 4 to 8 inch band of snow that runs from about Chicago on the south side and not quite to Green Bay on the northern side. So right in there, you've got this 4 to 8 inch band. And here in the east, this is, as we move this along, here in the east, we're looking at the GFS was actually pretty bullish for snow amounts in parts of northern New Jersey, eastern Pennsylvania, and then on up in through upstate New York and through New England. So, the Weather Service looks like it followed the GFS model with the snow amounts. And you can see the snow amounts on the model actually extended south and west of there You've got some 2 and 3 inch amounts down into Mississippi and Alabama, western North Carolina, eastern Tennessee, western Virginia, in and around the Washington, D.C., Baltimore area. You go into southeastern PA, south central PA, you start to get to some 3-4 inch plus amounts, and then the amounts go up north and east of there. It's, again, I'm struggling with the overrunning on the backside of the front and whether the precip is going to wind up shutting off a bit faster. So we'll see what the new run has done, because we should have, well, this is out to 42 hours, so we'll have to wait. Let's see if the new surface is out. It's out to 54, so that'll take us at least into 1 a.m. And there you go. So it's very consistent. This is at 1 a.m. This is measurable precip. It's not what the radar is supposed to look like. If you see the measurable precip in the last 6 hour period, so as far as the actual radar echoes at this point, it's probably already over with at New York City and probably coming to an end over central and eastern Long Island. So that part of it will be further east, much like the NAM. And you also have some sleet being indicated down in southeastern Virginia and into western North Carolina. We'll give the maps a little more time to fill in. Why don't we look at the temperatures, because these are going to be pretty cold. And there you have it. The upper trough is dropping down pretty far to the west, and you're seeing, the core of this cold air, the really brutal air, with the minus 30s in northern Iowa through Minnesota, the eastern Dakotas, minus 20 to minus 30 across Wisconsin and northern Illinois. Chicago on this would probably be about minus 15, minus 20. The zero line is in the white, or just inside that white area. It's all of this is single digits, and this is by Tuesday night. So the Arctic air is, again, further back. You can see where the freezing line is supposed to be. The 32-degree line is not that far from New York City on this at 1 a.m. And by this time, precip is over. So you can see my reasoning behind keeping amounts down along the coast, because of the surface temperatures being above 32. Now, I want to also caution the other way, because a lot of times in situations like this, the cold air actually comes in a bit faster than modeled, at least at the surface. And here's the 7 a.m. temperature for Wednesday morning. You look at where that minus 20 goes down into central Illinois, northern Indiana, even at touching northwestern Ohio. Chicago is somewhere between that minus 23 that's to the south of it and the minus 31 that's to the northwest of it. And then you've got temperatures close to minus 40 as you head up. This is temperature now. We're not talking, wind chill here. We're talking temperatures. And the freezing line gets down into northern Florida through all of the Florida Panhandle, the Mississippi and Alabama Gulf Coast, and 32-degree temperatures just outside of New Orleans, and the 20s on up in northern Mississippi, central Alabama, northern Georgia, interior South and North Carolina. You're seeing temperatures down in the 20s. The core of the cold air is really going to be moving more east than south, so you're going to see that cold air, some of that's going to try to bleed southward, but the core of that cold air is going to be left behind in the plains. And there's your low here by Wednesday afternoon. The Arctic front on the GFS is through. You can see the isobars are kind of V-shaped here. That's the Arctic front going by, and that snow pulls away to the northeast. Look at the gradient across the Great Lakes. So here's where they're getting that lake effect off Lake Michigan. The gradient is crazy here, very, very tight. So you're talking about some pretty wicked wind chills. Just want to see if we could get the wind map up. And yeah, I mean, look, you're looking at sustained winds here of, sustained winds close to gale force throughout all of the Great Lakes. So the shore areas there are going to be blowing away from the northwest, and that lake effect machine is going to be working overtime. The same is going to hold true for the lake effect machine that's going to kick in upstate New York, back through southwestern New York. Looks like the isobars are kind of westerly, so it would bring the snows up into north central New York and also southwestern New York off of Lake Erie into western PA and into eastern Ohio. So some solid lake effect action there. And of course, the gradient is fairly tight here in the east Wednesday afternoon after the Arctic front goes by. So no doubt about it, this is going to be some very, very cold air. Let's go back to the long range. Just going to do this real quick as we're coming up on 10:50 Eastern time, and I don't want to keep everybody up late. But look at that upper low. I mean, it's hard to see on this map with the regular anomalies. So I'm going to go to the one that shows the normal anomalies. You can probably see the upper low a bit better. I mean, that upper low comes down into the northern Great Lakes. I have seen instances where it's come down further south than this, but it hasn't really made a trip down this far south in quite a while. And then it just lifts away to the northeast. So as fast as it comes in, it goes out. And here we are by Saturday, and it's gone. And here comes an upper ridge. So you know we're going to warm up. And there's your next energy that's running up into northern Illinois with no cold air left. We know what the outcome is there. And as far as the long range is concerned, and we'll address this a bit more tomorrow, but as far as the long range is concerned, look where that trough is by early next week. Ridge in the east, trough in the west, Pacific flow. The cold air is going to be coming down into the western part of the U.S. With the pattern changing here, at least temporarily, I think. Now, down the road, there's a little bit of blocking being indicated, building across Greenland, forces of a little vortex there in south of James Bay. So you do have a bit of a colder look to the series as you get later in the forecast period. But I'm not particularly excited by this, if only because of the fact that we're going beyond what's reasonable to assume. So we've got at least through days 9 and through 8, at least through day 8 into day 9, you've got this trough in the west, ridge in the east, which is going to mean for a warmer first few days of February, and then after that, let's just put our hands up in the air and just take the I don't know route. The folks that live inside my neck of the woods are, they're upset over the fact that we're seeing, in the snow hole area anyway, we could wind up not seeing much again, and they're not happy about it. Here's the new GFS. This is the 10-day snowfall, which pretty much covers just much of this is from the first event anyway. So let me just back this. I won't back it up too far. I just want to maybe get it out to, all right, let me just back. Let's go back to by Wednesday night. So see the snow amounts that still pretty bullish in eastern Pennsylvania and even into northwestern New Jersey, and then on up into northwest Connecticut. The areas to the east near the coast, that is my big question at this point. I'm fairly confident of what's going to happen inland with my forecast, but I'm not really so sure about and how much energy are you going to expend for trying to get a forecast for a coating to an inch? That's the thing. It's a coating to an inch. We're fighting for in coastal areas. I don't think we're going to wind up getting much more than that unless we see the cold air really come in quickly and you get a brief period of rain at the start, and then you could snow for about 5 or 6 hours. Then maybe you could wind up putting down something a bit more substantial. But that is a huge, huge if to consider. So anyway, let me just come back to the board now. And by the way, if for review, if I did a live stream this morning, in case you missed it, we did do a little bit of Europe and in southern Canada. So if you're watching from across the Atlantic, check that out. We didn't do a long analysis, but we did focus a bit of attention on that particular area. So let me just say a quick hello to everybody. Thanks for being here. JPTR2A, thank you so much. I really appreciate you hitting Super Chat tonight. Thank you. That's coffee and 2 cigars for me. And it's a nice birthday present. Thank you very much. Okay, so Izzy D, you want me to keep talking forever? I'm trying to talk long enough so that my neck doesn't give out with my spasms that I've been having today. Uh, they actually, I thought I was going to have one was felt like it was starting right before I started this live stream, and it stopped. So I'm hoping that that's a good sign. I had this happen actually a couple of weeks ago, and right after Christmas, or I'm sorry, right before going into Christmas, and they went away, and I haven't had a problem until back a couple of days ago. I think the Catskills, Timothy, are going to do should do fairly well with this, and also up into the Adirondacks and into northern New England. You're at or slightly below average, or at or slightly above average in that area, depending on where you are. So, considering what's going on downstate, you are you are um, you're having a pretty you're having a typical winter, which is not a bad thing for winter weather lovers. The model just wants to warm up and rain more to the north because models can't stand the thought of this that this could be of this cold being long term. So I hate to suggest, but the forecast appears fake. You know something? Listen, if it winds up at least for coastal areas that we don't see a flake or an ice pellet, do not be shocked. Okay, that is possible. It's always tough. Rain changing to snow situations are do not happen all that often. So there was one year, I think it was the winter of 2005, 2006, where virtually every storm we had was a rain changing to snow situation. And there were some pretty sizable snowfalls here on Long Island from that particular winter, less so as you went just west of here. I actually enjoy rain changing to snow situations. I think that's my favorite way of watching a snow event that starts as rain, and then you kind of you're looking outside and you start to see those first flakes begin to mix in, and then all of a sudden it just winds up being all snow. That's like I don't know. I guess it's my sense of drama. Comfort Living thermoplastic denture adhesive. Our weather station says only 1 to 3 inches. They change every few minutes. This is again goes back to what I did with my early call map, which I made yesterday. The models have adjusted. Actually, they've actually come more toward my forecast than me coming toward them, and that's a good thing. If you're a young weather forecaster, you want to be able to put up a map. You want to be able to do something like this where the models come into what you have and not the other way around. So that at least is telling you that your head is in the right place. Thanks for the birthday wishes, by the way, Chris Alley. I really appreciate it. I will be here as often as I can be. Friday was tough. I wound up having to leave work early because I was not doing well. William Uber, thank you, by the way. You also hit a super chat tonight, welcoming me to the 60 Club. And I've said many times, when I turned 33, I changed over to rain. Now that I'm 60, I'm going over to drizzle and fog, and it certainly feels that way. I was also lamenting the fact that you finally get old enough, you finally have your head together, and what happens? Your rear end falls apart. And I think that's really pretty much how life works. Um, Wilsonville, Alabama, Jess Harden. Okay, so let me just look on a map to see where that is because I don't know where that is. If it's closer to Birmingham, so Wilsonville, Alabama. I am pulling it up on a map right now. So it looks like I got to get okay. So you're actually southeast of Birmingham. Boy, you're gonna Oh, I see. Okay, so you're north of Montgomery, but you actually you're just southeast of Birmingham, but north of Montgomery. Hey, you know what? If it breaks the right way for you, you might see a coating to an inch or two. If as long as the precip doesn't shut off, and the dry and cold air comes in, you might finally get. You've been asking me for almost every day, so maybe finally you might actually see it, which is a good thing. Scott Taylor pointing out that much of 44% of the country is covered in natural fallen snow, and Yeah, the ski resorts have actually done pretty well up in upstate New York and in New England this year. So in central and northern New England, um, anyhow. That's a good thing. These weekends are very important to the ski resorts. So now that we're almost into February, before too long, we'll be at the end of March and April. And it did remind me last year I was driving back. I was in Connecticut in April, and from the nor'easters and from the snows of the nor'easters up in the Berkshires, I think it was in the middle part of April. There were still patches in the wooded areas. There were still patches of unmelted snow. Not a lot, but there were some, and one in particular was near a ski hill, and that was interesting to see that late in the month of April. 99 Wolves. I was the guy that posted a ton of Rolex pictures at 3 in the morning. Wait till Le Mans, uh, and you'll do it again, but we'll live stream unlisted for that race to avoid the copyright. Good, and then go public. Gotcha. And 99 Wolves, let us know how much snow you get out of this, and how you are going to get through all the how you get through the double digit below zero temperatures. You're talking about snow holes earlier. Well, you're in Virginia Beach. We're always close to that snow hole every year. Well, pretty much. I think, Joe, Value V, you probably would you might want to look at, for your area, might want to look at it the other way around. It's when you aren't in a snow hole that stands out far more than when you are in one. Robert, just lost your post. There you go, Robert Hurley, the shoulder. Okay, it's not too bad. I had a couple of spasm attacks during the day today, but they seem to have relented. Um, Reaver, I was looking for I was actually just before we went on. I had it before, and it disappeared on me. So I have to find it again. I'll dig it up. The map that shows all the snow so far this winter across the U.S. and how how very small this snow hole actually is, and how much snow that has fallen all around us, to the north, to the east, and to the south, and especially to the south. Uh, what's the Ryan, dynamic cooling possible for storms that look like rain events down the road? I don't know, Ryan. There's not a whole lot of cold air to play with. The upper air is in a bit of a mess. So I think I don't even I really, to tell you the truth, I didn't really look too closely to the long range, but my cursory view was I was not all that, from the snow lover standpoint, I was not all that pleased. The only thing is, knowing how the models are in the long range, I would leave the door open for something to come up a bit differently as we go through the next couple of days. So, let's get through this event here that we're going to have, and see what all this all does. The cold air is going to pull out, and then we can just kind of sit back and reevaluate things as we when we get toward the end of the latter part of this week, and see where we're going with respect to the long haul. So let's wrap it up here at this point. Thanks for being here tonight. At this, it's late. It's getting late, and tomorrow we'll do our normal routine. So Patreon members, I'll live stream tomorrow morning, probably after the NAM is done. So or maybe as the GFS is coming out. So figure about 10:30. And for those of you who haven't joined and are interested, let me just leave you with the link to the Patreon platform. It's a subscription platform. It's just $2 a month. It's a great way to support what I'm doing with my channel, and with my YouTube channel, and with everything else that I'm doing with my websites. The Patreon platform is members only. You get posts that are on the website, but you also get posts that are not on the website. And when you get them without any ads, which is a good thing. And also, you're going to get live streams just for Patreon members. A number of you that are on here are part of the group, and you have said some very nice things about